brand new season. We're back in 2017.
17, wow.
Yeah, so we're back ready to go. Yeah, Rabbi Freeman, I know you had an eventful December. Sorry about that one little issue. I know you got that holiday job as Mariah Carey's lip sync coordinator. I know that didn't work out so well, but you live and learn.
Right.
It sounded like a good opportunity at first, but sometimes things just don't work out the way you think.
Right. I actually even read that something didn't work out. I didn't pursue the story much, but I heard that something didn't work out.
Maybe that's not your career.
Right.
Maybe you should stick to rabbiing.
Yeah.
That'll be a little better for you. But,
Right.
other things happened when we were gone as well. I mean, your man, your guy, Barack Obama.
Yeah.
Barack Obama, I got to tell you, after 8 years of not being a big fan of Barack Obama, I know you didn't notice that, but I'm now, he achieved some amazing things in the last couple of weeks. Number one, I think his most amazing achievement is he actually made Jimmy Carter the second worst president in the history of the country,
right.
Which it takes a lot of work and a lot of achievement to do that. So I'm proud of him on that. But I find it interesting with Barack Obama, and the more serious note, how can we get into the mind? This guy knows, listen, he has just been totally repudiated. Everything that he's done, he said he was going to change America, radically change America. I mean, from his socialized health care to everything he's done is going to be gone.
Wait a second. He wasn't repudiated. The Russian hackers did it.
Well,
it wasn't.
What? But those Russian hackers totally repudiated him.
So what?
and like a lot. And listen, so this guy here, everything is gone. He's now hunkered down in his bunker in Washington, knowing they're about, especially the Russians, just like some other people in the past, are about to come for him. It's all over for him. Everything he's done is going to be gone. Total repudiation. And he's saying to himself, what am I going to do? I need to have one legacy. Everything is gone. So does he go out, maybe go to the UN and get a climate change bill? You know how he is with climate change. That's everything. We could destroy business for 1,000 years with a climate change bill. What can we do? Just like most of the descendants of Amalek, which I assume Barack Obama is right there, he goes...
Or at least is applying for admission into the club.
He does like every other one. What can we do? The Jews. I mean, think about it. He can only do one thing to get his name in history. 70 years ago, another descendant of Amalek is sitting there in his bunker, surrounded. The Russians are coming. People are coming to destroy the city. His generals are saying, we need ammunition. We need tanks. Send them to the Russian front. We need those trains. But no, there happen to be a couple of Hungarian Jews that have still not been yet sent to the gas chambers. So he takes the chains and he sends them to Auschwitz instead of sending to defend the city. That was his legacy. Same thing happening here. Goes to the UN, writes a resolution, secretly gives it to the Egyptians to take Israel back to its 1967 borders. No Jerusalem, no Wailing Wall, Samaria, whatever. That's going to be his legacy.
And by the way, the Egyptians, to their credit, the Egyptians, amazingly enough, they said, no, we
don't even want to go there.
We don't want to go there.
So Barack, Muslim Brotherhood Obama,
he found some other lackey to do it.
He even goes further than the Egyptians. But I find it almost it must be in his DNA. How could he rationally think that, and listen, this is what he's going to be known for. I mean, this is what, of all the things he wanted, this is what he's going to be known for. At least I destroyed the Jews. In his mind, the Jews are going to be over. I've done what I had to do. I don't know how to explain this, and I don't know, is there something deeper to this?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. Someone, not me, but someone could have taken exception to what you're saying had he just let them not veto. If they could have said, listen, we're not going to veto it, and we believe that these are an impediment to peace, and we've said so many, many times, and we're just not going to veto. But when he sent Kerry out to explain it...
He did a great job.
So then that made it crystal clear, like what was going on the whole time. Because, all Kerry did was just, as far as you're Jew, he just blew himself up.
But he said it perfectly, and I think what Kerry said perfectly, especially when he said that Israel, you have a choice. You can either be Jewish or be democratic. Right. You can't be both.
That's right.
And I kind of think it's the same thing I can say to all my friends and relatives out there, my liberal Jew friends right now. You can either be Jewish or a Democrat. You can't be both anymore. I don't know how you can.
Very
because it's not possible.
Right.
How do you explain this? Is this what's really going on?
So, amazingly enough, I was actually in a synagogue. I guess Carrie spoke a week and a half ago. Must have been on a Wednesday or a Thursday or something like that. The rabbi got up on the following Sabbath and he sermonized about this, and he was just bent out of shape. I personally was not all that perturbed by it, and I wasn't all that bent out of shape. And as a matter of fact, I have not been bent out of shape at all by anything that happened during the Obama presidency.
Hold, please. What you talking about, Rabbi? Go ahead.
It never bothered me because all the things that he did up till this very last one,
right?
And who knows, there might be another one coming. We don't even know. We've got a week, right? Can squeeze it in,
right?
That's why I didn't vote for him, because I believed that he was not only capable but intended to do all of those things,
I agree.
right? That's who he is. That's what he believes. I think anyone could have seen that. So I wasn't blown out of the water by Obamacare. He said he was going to do it. I wasn't blown any of this stuff.
Right.
Like he said he's going to do it. So the same thing with Israel. I mean, we know where he's coming from. However, even all that said, there's not this. So there wasn't any shock factor there. But I'm not actually even angry by the non-veto.
Okay.
Even though technically this puts Israel and Israelis in a more difficult position, because the next thing that could come up now at the UN is one of the clauses in there is he's supposed to follow up on it, and I think give a report every 30 days or 6 months or something. There was some clause in there, and if the Israelis have not adhered to the condemnation, they can be censured even further, which means that an Israeli, let's say a representative of the government, a military person or anyone working in the government, could be in a foreign country and could be apprehended, right, and could be charged as a international criminal. Right. So it really is potentially a dicey situation.
Lawsuits could be, that's lawsuits for a baker that's in Jerusalem or anybody lives in Jerusalem. But you're right.
So there's a lot of potential downside, and yet, I'm sanguine about the whole thing. I don't mind. It doesn't bother me.
What, me worry?
Yeah, what me worry, exactly. As a matter of fact, in a certain way, I actually believe that it is a good thing. I hate to say it, but I think
I'm ready for this.
I think that there's good. I'll say two ideas. Number one is, as long as the world kept on attempting to censure Israel, and as long as the United States kept on coming to their rescue by vetoing said sanctions and things like that,
good point,
then Israel said, well, we're doing okay and we're secure and we're going to be okay because our friend and ally in Washington is going to take care of us.
That's a good point. Good point.
Now they realize that they have no friend and ally in Washington, at least at the moment. Maybe things will change, but at least at the moment, they have no friend and ally who is going to take care of them.
Right.
And the cat's out of the bag, and now they have to deal with it. And now, what will stop them, for example, from building in the territories if they want to? You can't do any worse to us. You did what all you could do.
It's true.
And we're going to live the way we're going to live, and we understand. There's a bottom line. I heard the most important, incisive statement.
Thank you.
About
I thought you were I'm sorry. I thought you meant my opening statement. Sorry.
Just this morning on the radio, I heard someone say the deepest, most, in my opinion, truthful statement I've ever heard about the Middle East conflict. It was said by an Arab who lives in Jerusalem. there was just a tragic event.
Right.
Yesterday, was it?
It depends what you were watching. If you're watching any other news channel, but maybe Fox, you didn't hear it. It was yesterday, though.
It was yesterday, right. So the guy drove a truck in, a bunch of soldiers, killed a bunch of them, like the recruits and all that. Anyway, it was a horrible situation. Killed 5 people, four,
Little
right.
girl, 20-year-old girls, I think.
Yeah, right, women, so, okay. So they interviewed a guy, just there, resident, no one special, no one nothing, no title.
Right.
And he said, I feel really sorry for them. I'm sorry. But you have to understand, they think the land is theirs, and we think the land is ours. And this is going to continue until one or the other of us gets the land.
That's a good point, yeah.
And you know what?
Right.
Mr. Kerry and Mr. Obama, that is the bottom line. This guy knows it. This guy knows it. A lot of other people know it. That is the way it is. I understand him. I get him. Mr. Arab, resident of East Jerusalem, you believe the land is yours. I understand. I even know why you think it's yours. I get it. I hope you understand why I think it's mine. But you're right. You got your claim, but I got my claim. And the two claims cannot coexist. Someone's going to lose. Someone's going to win.
I agree. Yep.
Now, I would just say that if the Arabs would cede their claim to the Israelis, I think it would be okay for them. I think that they would end up living a pretty okay life.
Better the life than they've lived in the past.
Right. And if it would be the other way around, if the Israelis would cede their claim to the Arabs, like, you better get out of there quick because your blood's going to be running in the streets.
Absolutely.
Okay. But even so, the bottom line is the two have their argument. And as long as the Israeli government and the Israeli people and Jews around the world look to bodies such as the UN for their legitimacy, it just is not going to happen.
That's a good point.
Because the Arabs will say, who cares that the UN made a resolution to create a state of Israel? I don't care about that. That was illegitimate. I mean, I think lots of things the UN does are illegitimate. So if the existence of the state of Israel is dependent on the UN, forget that. Now, it just so happens, I believe it's because of this book that is thousands of years old. And in the book, it says really clearly that unto the children of Abraham I give the land.
Over and over and over and
right.
over again.
And the book and the way we read it, not according to the Quranic version, but the way, we're reading it. And so that is the legitimacy of it. And that ultimately is not going to be reconciled by the UN, and it's not going to be preserved by the United States vetoing sanctions and so on and so forth. So Israel has to come to terms with the fact that the world believes that it's not ours. Now here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
There is a great biblical commentator. He's called by his acronym, Rashi. The letter, Hebrew letter Resh for Rabbi, Shin for Shlomo, and Yud for Yitzchaki. So we call him Rashi. And he is the commentator par excellence. Every Jewish child learns his commentary, and old men study his commentary. He is the baseline commentator. On the first verse in the Torah, he asks a very interesting question. And he says, why did the Torah start with the book of Genesis? The Torah should have picked up somewhere in the middle of Exodus, where God starts giving us all the rules and the regulations.
Right, okay.
What do we need all this history for? So he says a really interesting thing. He says, because there will come a time when the nations of the world will say, you...
And how long ago was this when Rashi
Rashi wrote this. Rashi wrote this in the year, well, he died in 1100 or 1099 or something like that, right?
Pre-Obamacare.
Yeah, right. And he's quoting a source that was ancient to him.
Gotcha.
Okay? So there will come a time when the nations of the world will say to the Jews, you are illegitimate usurpers of the land of Israel. You do not have a claim to the land of Israel. And the reason there is the book of Genesis is to tell you that bottom line is God created the world and he owns it, and he can decide to give whichever piece of land to whomever he wants to. Now, pretty interesting that Rashi said all the way back then that there's going to be this issue, and the nations of the now. Let me ask you something. In the 1050s, when he's writing, was that really logical that the nations of the world would be saying, "You're usurping the land of Israel"?
No, not at all.
I mean, that was like a far cry. But he's saying there's going to come a time. Well, guess what? There came a time. Yep. It's been happening a lot, and it happened at the UN just about a week and a half ago. And that's exactly what the nations of the world are saying. They are not saying we're against settlements.
No, not at all.
They are saying what the guy in the street, the Arab in the street, is saying. We say it's ours, you say it's yours. As a matter of fact, if Israel would say, I'll tell you what, we will withdraw to our pre-67 borders. Yep. All you have to do is say that you recognize the right of Israel to exist. Not a chance. It's not happening.
We would then be talking about the pre-1948 borders in about 5 minutes, I think.
Right. It's not going to be, and they're not going to legitimize, they're not going to legitimize pre-67 borders. They're not going to recognize 48 borders. They're not going to recognize anything. So the whole thing is moot. But it is a good thing for Israel to realize, because up until now, Israel's been depending on Uncle Sam to veto for their existence, and Israel has to realize that, no, we exist for an entirely different reason.
There's nothing to do with the U.S. or the UN.
If God wanted us to be here, He puts us here. If He doesn't want us to be here, we're going to be gone. So we're here because God so granted it to us. Now, I'll tell you another thing. That was point number one. Point number two. This is a great rabbi said this some years ago. He's since passed away. He's a rabbi named Rabbi Palm, P-A-M. So Rabbi Palm said that there is a passage in the Talmud that says, when the day of reckoning comes, so God's going to judge all the nations of the world.
Right.
And He's going to judge them, He's going to say, by one question, how did you do with the Jews? How were you with the Jews? Okay? And all the nations are going to line up and they're going to say, we were the best friends ever of the Jews.
Right.
And we did all the things that we did just so that the Jews, we built highways so the Jews could travel on them.
Right.
And we, everything that we did it for the Jews. Right? And God's going to say, you fools, you did it for yourself. So Rabbi Palm said, many years ago, he's been dead already for 20 years. Rabbi Palm said, the nations of the world could argue back and they could say, no, we really did it for Israel. And they could go back and forth. And, God could argue with them. So then what God's going to do is, God's going to say, there was a group called the United Nations. Let's see what the United Nations proclaimed. Let's read the proclamations, and we'll decide, were the nations of the world really for the Jews?
What about France?
Were they for the Jews or were they against the Jews? So he said, the reason that the United Nations existed is so God could have documentation.
Good point. I like that.
When the judgment day comes, it's already been introduced into the official court record, the resolutions of the United Nations. So here, I think we have, Mr. Obama chose to, he could have gone away and been debated. Was he a friend of Israel? Was he not a friend of Israel?
Want that debate.
It could have been debated. But instead he chose to put in the record, and if there was still, I believe, after they did the vote, I believe it was still debatable because I read a liberal Jewish comment that was talking about how debatable it was. So I think Mr. Kerry came along and officially put on the record clarification to make sure that no one could possibly think that that the Obama administration was somehow supportive of the Jewish people.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt at this point right now. And I think you make a good point also, not just for the be documented record. It now puts countries like Spain and France and every other country who also depended on that U.S. veto. For listen, for my people, we have to say no, we're against Israel. But now that the U.S. is no longer counted on, they have to be called on now to make a deal. Their decision, their vote is going to count a little bit more now. They always counted on it being vetoed. Now they can't do that anymore.
Right.
So it's the same. It's the same
New
thing.
Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand. What are they
doing?
doing?
What are you doing, New Zealand? Where did you come from?
It's like it's an amazing thing. But it still gets back to the situation, the question I have, and I understand what you're saying, and I agree with what you're saying. But still, the whole world and we've had this discussion before, the whole world, when you say the question between an Arab Jew who made his point, Arab in Israel who made his point, it's our land, and the Jews say it's our land, why does the whole world say it's not? Then most of this world is a Christian world who reads the same thousands-year-old book that we're talking about. Why does Spain and France and every other country support the Palestinian, whoever they are, the Palestinian issues, and not the Israelis?
Right. So this has been that issue, that eternal issue that the Jewish people struggle with, and that is that in order for the Jewish people to be who they are and play the, I guess, lead role in directing the world towards, we believe, towards its ultimately exalted, elevated place. I'm not talking about the Jewish people's exalted place. I'm talking about elevating the entire world.
Right.
So along the way, there is always going to be opposition to that. The world does not want to necessarily be uplifted in this way that Israel has the potential to do, and provides that opposition. And but Israel needs to get its act together, understand what its mission is and what it's doing, and we believe all the rest of it, noise. Just that is just interference, and it'll just go away. Background noise, and it'll all just go away. And I believe that this UN non-veto was a step towards removing some of that interference and having Israel realize, we've got to understand, why are we here? Do we really want this place? If we really want it, it's like they'll tell you right now, they have a football game tonight. You know who's going to win? The team that wants it the most.
Yeah, I hope so.
I said the team that wants it the most, right?
I want it.
Yeah, right. So the one that wants it the most is the one that's going to win. And Israel has to understand why they want it. What do they want it for? Right? Now, up until now, the nations of the world and their anti-Semitism have been reminding the Jews why they want it. But there's got to be a reason more than just the fact that they all hate us. We have to understand that we want it because from Israel we can do great things. It says, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, for the Torah will come out of Zion. We want to do great things for the world, and it happens from Israel. When we embrace that, when we get it, everything will fall in place. Until then, we won't. I believe that this was a step towards helping us understand that.
And that makes sense. Now, do you mean and do you think this will be a situation when Israel finally says, you know what, we can play along for so long. No longer can we even care about what the UN says. You know what, from now on, maybe it's time to stop pretending. Maybe it's time to get a little bit stronger in their means, and maybe to say, listen, if we can't have a West Bank full of people, or if we can't have Gaza full of people shooting rocks at us, we might have to remove Gaza. Is it at the point where Israel has to take a stronger stance?
So Israel is going to, it's a dangerous thing. It is a dangerous thing, and I think that the bottom line is that Israel has to first understand why it must be there. Why do I have a right? Even though he says, the Arab guy says, the land belongs to him, I have to be able to say the land belongs to me. And what's my argument? Only when I can say, because this is the land that was bequeathed to my fathers and their fathers by God centuries ago. If you can say that, then you can look at the other guy in the eye, and I believe the other guy's going to back down because he knows. The reason he's still throwing rockets and the reason he's still fighting with you is because he doesn't believe that you believe.
I think you may be right. So we're just saying, stop talking about the Balfour Declaration, stop talking about what we earned, stop talking about the people coming back after World War II. It's time to talk Torah.
That's right.
And because truthfully, it would be a tough time for the religious Muslim to argue. To argue that fact. It's there, it's written, and then there's things later on they change, but it's pretty tough to argue the fact of the religious historical creation of Israel.
Yeah, you see the Arab who lives in the land, and his fathers lived there, and his grandfathers lived there, he has a personal connection to the land, which is really interesting. And I, whose father didn't live there, and whose father's father didn't live there, and so on and so forth, I have a national connection to the land. And ultimately, I believe that my connection, which is thousands of years old, will trump the local connection or the limited connection of the person who's been living there for the last 3 generations or so. But I have to really appreciate and understand that this is who I really am and where I belong and where I come from.
Right, so it's up to the Jews then.
Yep.
It's up to the Jews to finally maybe realize who they are, what they are, and where they came from.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, all told, I was not upset by the UN vote because we all knew that that's what everyone wants to do. And I personally knew that this president was not in his heart. Maybe he vetoed it the last time or two. I don't know if he had to veto it twice.
He was still a president at the time.
Yeah, right. So he was still making his calculations.
I tell you what, he was getting a lot of Jewish money coming into that campaign. Too.
But now that he has nothing to lose, he's made a statement, which doesn't surprise me because I figured that's where he was all along anyway. So no surprises. And the only thing is, it's a wake-up call to Israel, which is a healthy thing, ultimately.
Guess I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Okay.
All right. Well, we will be back next week.
Yeah.
Hopefully, better stories, better news, but more information for you, the viewer.
That's right.
All right.